Now, before I take you to these findings, just let me tell you, this is the team of instructors and the director of the Intensive English Program. And I would like to let you know how I got to these findings. What I did was that I interviewed 5 students from the Intensive English Program. 4 of them are still in the program. 1 of them finished the program and is at this moment studying a master's program in USI, the University of Southern Indiana. And I interviewed 3, the director of the Intensive English Program, and 3 non-native English speaking instructors, and 2 of them who are native English speakers. What we did was that we carried on these interviews, and after carrying the interviews, I compared how these answers were applying through 1 week of class observation. So that's how we got there. Now, what are the findings? Number 1 is that the Intensive English Program at USI has a very open mind, because their director say that it is not about the origin of the instructor, it is about the methodology. So it doesn't matter really if the instructor is native or non-native English speaker to be good, which is a very good position given the multicultural background that English has today. Now, number 2 is that English learning is influenced by the context. So in this point, I would really like to point at one of the non-native instructors who said, being a non-native English speaker has never played against me for teaching, but it has on my learning, because I learned English in my own country. Students who come here learn faster how to deal with language and culture at the same time. He was giving examples like in his culture, which is Arabic, people don't really introduce themselves before speaking, or they never start conversations by, for example, talking about the weather. In English, you do. So it has been easier for him to be in the United States and teach his students that this is something that can happen, or make their students aware, for example, that when they say see you later, it doesn't mean that they will actually see them later on a schedule, or when they tell them like we should meet for some coffee one of these days, is not a formal invitation as it is in your culture, in his culture. So this is very connected to what I was saying in the previous video, when it said that language evolves differently when it is spoken natively or not. Yeah. Number 3, native speakers make mistakes too. This is something very important, and this is like one of the biggest aspects or the biggest advantages of being a native speaker teacher or instructor. And it is that one of them was telling me that every time she is in the classroom and she makes a mistake, she kind of makes a big deal about it, so her students are able to correct her. And that's the way in which she shows that native English speakers also make mistakes, and mistakes are one way of learning, and it is nothing to be ashamed about. Number 4, there are many ways to include culture in the classroom. All of them do it in a different way. One of these instructors told me what he does is that he presents situations and he just does it directly. He just shows his students, like, why would this person do this, where does this person come from, or where do you think this person comes from, and they just talk about it. A native speaker, she told me that what she does is that she makes them talk about topics like discrimination, and when they speak about these topics, everything like comes to the table, and they start talking about how they feel in a country which is different from theirs. And that's the way they manage, and that's the way they are able to bring culture to their classroom, to talk about also like different kinds of discrimination that they live in their cultures. Other was telling me that what she does is that she makes students talk, for example, what were the games they used to play when they were kids, because she realizes that there are some things that in our mother tongue are so natural to us, and we have so much jargon in it that once we need to express that in a different language, we come to trouble. So this is for her a very challenging way in which you learn to express your own self in a different language. Also, they have many field trips, and what I realized about the Intensive English Program and the University of Southern Indiana in general terms is that they motivate people a lot to talk about their culture and to show their roots, to show their cultural background. And this is a way in which people enrich their minds, not only by learning about others, but also to finding the words and to find the ways to speak about themselves in English. And this is something this is awakening, and this is something that I would definitely like to take back to my classroom in Colombia. And it is to speak very much about what we do and about who we are, because that's a way in which we discover our own identity. Number 5 is that students are prepared in the IEP to interact with native speakers. They don't have special tips, or they are not really prepared to talk about non-native, because that is something that naturally happens among them. And about this communication with native people, I have very interesting observations from the students. For example, the one who's studying the master's, he said that the intensive English program is too, like, its base is too strong in the academic setting, and that is why he bought the book, which is called Speak English as an American. And because he has this book, he learned idioms, which is something that he was very interested into learning, and he just made like very big efforts to have a grasp of the American culture and to be as much involved as he could. And one of the other students, she said that she wanted to learn native like English, because her mother tongue is Japanese and she wants to become an English teacher once she goes back. And what she says is something very interesting, because she discovered that her culture and her language is it keeps a monotone and is very plain in expressing emotions and expressing feelings. And that is something that she struggles with a lot, because she has realized that English is a language of intonation, and she wants to find a way to transmit this to her students, her future students. And about the environment, there was another student who said something very interesting. I'm just going to quote him. He says, native people are in their comfort zone. It is comfortable, so that's why they don't want to leave. They think that they don't need another language because English is the language of the world. But those who know more than one language are more flexible, so that's why it's easier to communicate with them, and they can understand me better and I can be understood better by them. So this just shows that a bilingual person is not two monolinguals in one, right? That we have a very interesting interaction between the languages that we speak, and it changes the way we see the world. And in another non-native English speaker instructor, she said, we want them to be as close as natives, to be fast in understanding and be understood. We help them raise awareness of all these features that happen in natural speech, for them to watch out for these things and be successful in producing them correctly. And she's talking about especially intonation and word stress, sentence stress, and how this interferes in the way they communicate. One very interesting task that I found is that when they are in level 5 or 6 is when they are about to be accepted to take the TOEFL and be accepted in a program in the university. So that's why one of the instructors just makes them start looking for articles related to what they want to study, and they start reading who are the authors of these articles, and many students are just amazed to realize that most of those people they read are non-native English speakers. So they start analyzing why they write like that and how exactly they write. And another thing that I observed and that I have here in the conclusions, let me take you there. Well, is first, perspective from the students, is that ELF happens naturally in that environment because they all are surrounded by people who come from different cultures. But as I said with the Japanese students, they pay a lot of attention to the native-like model. And number 3 is that the classroom and the reality are still very different. And one aspect that one of the students highlighted was that when they have presentations in the classroom, they learn this by heart. And that is the reason why they don't feel that this is real English. And it connects very well to what one of the instructors was saying, and it is like the most important part in teaching is definitely conveying meaning, because he said we sometimes spend too long teaching how to create a sentence, but we don't spend enough time teaching how to use it. Before I reach the conclusions, I would like you to go to the Padlet once again. And there Answer question number 6. What are the strategies